socializing time was, you had an hour. Now no one's going to introduce themselves to me because I'm going to call you out by name. My name is Kiran Malhotra. I am the Executive Director for Thai Silicon Valley. I'm delighted to welcome you all here today for our mobile panel. As you can see, we have a fantastic panel this evening. What, you're not here for the mobile panel? You thought it was something else? Okay. We have a fantastic panel this evening, and they will be introduced in just a few moments. But what I like to do at the beginning of each session is I like to give a little bit of a background for the few people in the audience that maybe don't know about Thai or have not been to a Thai event before. So first of all, how many of you, have been to a Thai event before? How many of you have not been to a Thai event before? Okay, so that's great. Now for the rest of you, this might be review. We actually are in our 20th year this year. This is our 20th anniversary. We were founded right here in the Silicon Valley in '92 by a group of entrepreneurs and business executives who came to this country with nothing but their education and their willingness to work hard, and they made it big beyond their wildest imaginations. And they said, you know what? We would like to help other people succeed because we did not have that support when we came here, so we want to help others succeed. So that's what they did. So they would come together, they would tell their stories, the network grew bigger, they would bring speakers, and lo and behold, 20 years later, we have 57 chapters in 14 countries, and the mission has always been to foster entrepreneurship. So since day one, we've been an open and inclusive organization. We have three major stakeholders of Thai. We have our member community, which many of you are members, and if you're not members, it's only $100, 30 cents a day, it's a bargain, and you get to come to these amazing events and have wonderful Indian food, most of the time, and nice wine, a couple, 2, 3, 4 glasses of wine, and enjoy fantastic speakers. We have our charter member community. These are a special class of members. It's an invitation only. These people are invited to be part of this class, and because they are very successful entrepreneurs or C-level corporate executives or high-level academics, and we ask of them one very important thing, and that's their time. And their expertise, two important things. So the time is really the most precious thing that you can ask from somebody, and they give it to us freely. So they serve as our board members, they serve as speakers, they serve as chairs of programs, they serve as TICON conveners, and they really form the backbone of the organization. Can I see several charter members in the room today? Could you raise your hands for me? So if you're not sitting next to, raise your hand. Keep them up high. So I would find these people and go and sit next to them because I guarantee you will find a friend or somebody who can provide you advice or guidance and connectivity in the Valley. These people are wonderful people, and they have given a lot back to Thai over the years. Then we have our sponsor community. Our sponsors are the lifeblood of the organization. So they are the big banks, the big VC funds, law firms, other service providers, big corporations. And we couldn't do the programs that we do without the generous support of our sponsors today. So thank you very much to the sponsors for supporting Thai. And then we actually have a fourth category of stakeholders, and that's our volunteers. And they are from all of these three different stakeholder communities. So I have a team of only 5 people who are paid. So all of the other things that we do, all of these programs, all of, TICON, everything else that we do is by volunteer basis. So this thing doesn't work without the volunteers. So thank you very much to the volunteers who give us freely their time. We do about 50 to 60 programs like this throughout the year. Last year we did 64 programs. We have, about an average of 80 to 100 people per event. And we have several programs. So we've got a bunch of different forums. We have the interest groups on social, mobile, cloud, energy, life sciences. We have our purely networking mixer. We're having our next mixer in March. We have the Startup Leadership Program. We have a program called My Story, which showcases successful entrepreneurs on the first Tuesday of each month. We just had one on Tuesday featuring A.B. Periasamy. Fantastic event, fantastic concept, because this is kind of how Thai started. We would feature, somebody would come to Thai and tell everybody else their story, and then you could learn and ask questions from them. Thai Angels is something that we launched in August of 2010, and this is a seed funding forum for promising startups. And to date, we've funded 15 companies. So if you're looking for seed funding, if you know somebody looking for seed funding, I encourage you to apply to Thai Angels. It's very easy. Just go on our website, click on Thai Angel, and this is a very self-explanatory online process. It is a rolling process, so this month it's a little bit too late to apply for this month's selection, but if you want to be considered for March, I would encourage you to apply now. And if you have any questions, you please feel free to come and see me, or just go to the website and call our office. We also have our world's biggest conference for entrepreneurship coming up, which is TiCon. How many of you have been to TiCon or came to TiCon 2011? Fantastic. TiCon is our flagship event showcasing all of Thai and the best of Thai. And TiCon 2011 was so successful that it was named in Worth magazine as one of the 10 best conferences for ideas and entrepreneurship, along with conferences like TED and World Economic Forum. And we're very, very proud of that because we are, as I said, we run this conference by volunteers, and some of these other conferences are for profit. So it is a huge honor for us to have been selected as part of this 10. Lastly, I'd like to thank my staff, small staff as you can see, and you met Patricia, and then our board of directors who provides great support to me. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our program chair, Naveen Bish, to take over. Thank you for your attention.
Let's give a big round of applause to Kiran first. Kiran has been with Thai for the last 4 years, and I've been volunteering actively for the last 3 years, and she's done an outstanding job with a very small staff like Patricia, and we have I think looks like another panelist there outside. So Patricia and Dan, and only about like 4 people or so in her staff. She's done an outstanding job, so I really wanted to recognize that. And plus, most of the organization is run by volunteers, just like all the panelists. They're volunteers, and our co-chairs, myself, our board members, our TiCon convener from last year, Prakash, is sitting over there. Prakash himself is a very successful entrepreneur, founder and CEO of New Magic as well as Cirrus Logic. So as you can see, you can connect with a lot of highly successful entrepreneurs and members over here. So this is a good place for all those who are new to keep coming to Thai and become members. So now, I'm just waiting for our panelist to talk. So are you guys having fun? Doesn't look like. Just go get a glass of wine. It's on the house. You can get more than one glass of wine. Okay, well, looks like I'm not being that entertaining. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to introduce our 2 co-chairs again. Like I said, they are volunteers, very successful entrepreneurs. Akash Agrawal here is going to be co-chairing and moderating. He's a co-chair and he's going to be moderating also, and as well as host for the program with Nirav Beri. And Akash's background is he's been a serial entrepreneur, and that's how actually I got to meet him in 1999. We used to have a small fund, me and one of my partners. He seemed to be here before, I think he ate and he left. Manoj Goyal, he's one of the charter members. So we had a fund called Lakshmi Ventures. So we invested in his company called ITU in 99. That's how I got to know Akash. And over the years, we became good friends. Then he founded later on another company, as well as he's been in a number of large companies, Veritas, Oracle. He has a MBA from one of the East Coast schools, I guess, Harvard. So Akash is, as I said, very highly accomplished people, and right now he's a senior vice president at one of the mobile application companies called Location Labs. So let's give a big round of applause to Akash. Thank you, Ethan, for making it. You'll have to stay hungry until then. So, and then, so really I wanted to appreciate and recognize his time from his, hectic, he's part of a startup which is doing very well. The startup is in Emeryville. He lives in San Mateo, around that area, and then he comes all the way here to help. So you can imagine, so I really appreciate that. And same thing with Nirav Beri, our another co-chair. Nirav and I go long back. I won't tell you all the story. We were in school in Santa Barbara a long time ago. But he is also, he was founder. Okay, all right. So he was founder and CEO of a company called Cellmania, and actually not many people know that Cellmania was one of the first I guess app marketplace, yeah, app store. So, and it was bought by RAM, so, but I won't go from there onwards, since they have a new CEO right now. So I'm sure that he will be asked those questions while Akash will be, I'm sure Akash will be happy to ask him some interesting questions. So, and Niro again has a very strong background. Same, he was doing MS in computer science while we were in Santa Barbara. And then after that, he worked in a number of companies, and he also has an MBA from UC Berkeley. And then he's been in marketing, business development, as well as founder of Salmania. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Akash, and thank you all for joining us here today. Okay.
Thanks, so we've got a few slides here as well to just kind of warm everyone up. We won't kill you with the number of slides, but anyhow, good evening, everyone. We've got a great panel. I think that I've done a couple of these before, and we haven't had this many panelists. There's obviously a lot of interest in the mobile sub-segment, and within that, I think gaming is, I think it's a wide open space. I think even if you, we try to get people from Zynga, they couldn't make it. I think there were some conflicts, but I think Zynga wants to be the Zynga of mobile as well. And I think the opportunity to become sort of the Facebook or the Zynga of mobile gaming is wide open. That's kind of how I see it, and lots of people are taking cracks at it. Some have succeeded going so far, and I think we're going to discover and surface some of those issues today. With the help of our panelists, we have obviously some great investors here. We have people who are running gaming companies, gaming platforms. Out of all of these people, I'd say I have the least amount of knowledge in mobile gaming, and I'm going to try and basically hand over all the intelligent points to these people. So bear with me here. I want to also introduce a gentleman here, John Hegehorn, who's from FLG Partners. He reached out to Ty through his own connections. He runs a financial services consulting firm, and he's done some research in the sort of mobile gaming area, and he proactively reached out to me and the Thai leadership with some slides he put together, and it was very difficult for me to not allow him the opportunity to present some of these slides to you. And he was volunteering without being asked to volunteer. So he's going to present a few slides, and then I think we'll jump into the main session. And basically the session is going to work. I'll surface some sort of generic issues. We discuss them with the panelists, and then sort of foster a discussion and get the panelists' perspectives on the companies and the market they're in, and then allow you to sort of run the show from there. So let's move forward from there. John, why don't you come over? There's three slides here, and quickly take everyone through. I think so that people understand there are 100 million users in the US alone that have smartphones, and most of the mobile gaming is happening on smartphones. And I think you'll get these some slides here that John will take you through them. Take it away, John.
Okay. Well, you can see the market is exploding. You want to get up here?
Yeah.
The U.S. market grew 97% last year. The worldwide market grew 40%. It's on? Okay. And you can see the growth is expected to continue. If you go out to 2014, the worldwide market is expected to grow an average of 13% a year, and the U.S. market about 17%. The explosive growth in 2011 was driven by 55 million sales of tablets worldwide, 24 million of those in the U.S., all but 2 million of them iPads. So the other thing that doesn't show here is that advertising as a percent of the revenue in the U.S. is only about 6% now, but it's expected to grow to about 12% by 2014. It's only about 30 million, but the advertising portion of the total, this is U.S. revenue, will grow to about 300 million by 2014, or be a little over, as I say, about 12% of the total. Okay, this shows it's been a very active venture financing of the companies that are. This includes not just mobile games, but mobile applications, mobile stores, and security. And I also let in it game companies that are mostly web-based, like Playdom. So of the 500, roughly, this is a 15-quarter view from the Q1 of 2008 through Q3 of 2011. About $500 million invested. Of the 50 rounds that were in this sample, 26 of them were mobile game specific, and about half the funds raised, about $254 million out of the 498. And you can see that there were lots of VCs involved. 70 different VCs invested in these rounds of financing. And you can see that several, the firms that were most active were Excel, Kleiner, Lightspeed, Sequoia, and Norwest. Probably not a surprise to you, but there were many more to make up the 70. Moco raised 4 rounds out of this, and Playdom raised the most at $76 million. You know, they had a stunning exit to Disney, about a $500 million exit. And Robio, most of you, I'm sure you know, that's Angry Birds. That $42 million that they raised, some of it was raised by Valley investors, even though the firm is in Denmark. Finland, okay. How do you get the companies mixed up? Okay, this next one. Okay, you can see that the users, particularly the older users of smartphones that play games, has increased dramatically. You know, for the age group from from 25 up to 54, the percentage of smartphone users that play games have about tripled. Games represent 40% of all the downloads to smartphones, and 49% of the time spent on smartphones is now spent on gaming. Okay.
I think this is the kind of pertinent topic, so we'll just stop there.
Okay. All right, so thanks, John,
All right.
for putting that together. So now I'm going to introduce the panelists. And Ethan came last. We'll start from that side. Give him a chance to sort of catch his breath. He's probably been in the car and dealing with the Silicon Valley traffic. So we'll start with on the far side. We have Manu there, and Manu, why don't you introduce yourself? And what the format we're going to use is people are going to introduce themselves, what they're doing currently, and what they've done and, with mobile gaming, and then we'll sort of go around and then we'll surface the questions after that.
All right. My name is Manu Reiki. I'm actually an investment partner at Inventus Capital Group up on Sand Hill. So we focus on U.S., India firms, entrepreneurs in both countries. So my prior background to this, I've been in gaming for a few years. A company called LOL Apps, which recently merged with a company out of Hong Kong, and also in the gaming space, obviously. They're in the top 3 or 4 gaming companies, right after Zynga. And prior to that, I've had experience in actually being advising a lot of gaming companies. J2Play was acquired by Electronic Arts 3 years ago. 2 companies out of India, and then actually one out of Brazil called Mentes. So looking globally in terms of some of the gaming companies. As a firm, we haven't actually invested in a gaming company yet. We're still looking in terms of not just gaming itself, but also infrastructure play around games, being able to distribute games, and a whole bunch of sort of ancillary services that actually don't depend on any sort of hit model as well. So we're looking across the board for both games, publishers and distributors, but to date we haven't actually made an investment yet. So we're not part of the 70 companies that was shown earlier.
Thanks, Manu. So we have Sana Chaudhary here as well. She drove down from San Francisco, so I know what that commute's like. So Sana has an interesting background. She's doing something that sort of touches a lot of game publishers, developers, and she's trying to make take some of the challenges and impediments out of launching a gaming startup.
So thank you. My name is Sana Chaudhary. I'm the CEO of a company called Yetizen. And one of the arms of Yetizen, which is what we're focusing on more here, is actually that it is a games accelerator. It is the only games accelerator out there for post-launch, post-traction game companies. On our board are a lot of the VCs you saw on that slide. So Intel Capital, Excel, Norwest, Tim Chang used to be there, but now is on Mayfield. To date, we have taken 12 companies through our program. 9 of them are mobile. And that's both gaming studios as well as game network platform plays.
Thank you. We've got Nirav Berry. I think Naveen gave Nirav a good round of introductions. But let me just add a couple of things about why Nirav's here as well, in addition to being the co-chair. Nirav runs the BlackBerry Application Marketplace, and for many of you, that's sort of a marketplace that sort of competes obviously with iOS, App Store, Android Marketplace, and some of the other independent marketplaces. But there was a recent study that came out, I think yesterday or day before, on one of those blogs, TechCrunch or one of those other syndicated blogs, that said that the developers who are posting on that marketplace are actually making a lot more money than they are on, for example, the Android Marketplace and the Apple App Store. And they quoted something like they had more developers that made 6-figure, 100,000 in total sort of revenue on take home for the developer after RIM share than some of the other app stores. And now obviously RIM's a very controversial company right now for obvious reasons. So I think he'll add a dose of skepticism and sarcasm, I hope, to the conversation.
Well, I wouldn't believe whatever you read in the press. It's all bunk. RIM is actually doing quite well, not just in the US, but around the world as well. We are in several countries. We are the #1 smartphone. Prior to RIM, I ran a company called Cellmania, which was an app store platform for carriers. So I have a lot of experience distributing games and providing game platforms. So be interested in your questions.
How many people used to have a BlackBerry?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi.
This is Tracy from Unity Gaming. He's also come from San Francisco.
Love San Francisco. Yes, my name is Tracy Erickson. I run the Developer Relations Program at Unity Technologies. If you've never heard of Unity, it is a games engine company. We build tools that enable game developers to essentially build their games. And really the philosophy behind the company is to democratize that process. And we have more people using Unity tools to develop games than any other engine out there. We have 700,000 developers worldwide that use our tool to make games. And my job is to essentially make sure that those developers are taken care of and make sure that their games are a success. I've been with the company for just under a year, and before I joined them, I was a journalist for 10 years and specialized in mobile games. So I've been a pretty keen observer of the industry for quite some time now.
Thanks, Tracy. Sitting next to Tracy is Andy Yang. He's CEO of a gaming company called Playhaven. I know Andy from some of the work that I do in my own company. Andy's got a terrific background. I'll let him elaborate.
Thanks, Kosh. Playhaven is a lifetime value maximization platform specifically for mobile games. And the quickest way to describe it is we're kind of Zynga in a box. Meaning, if you are moving to mobile games and you need all the infrastructure for analytics, segmentation, extending the measuring retention versus monetization, we provide all those tools out of the box. So whether our customers spend anywhere from Blue Games, would like to focus on content and leverage us as a platform. We have players like Pocket Gems also using our technology as well. And our reach is about 300 million game sessions a month and 30 million uniques, and growing rapidly. What we do is Unity solves the content creation piece of the puzzle, but after that, if you're building a freemium game, there's a whole monetization, retention, analytics piece. So we're the next layer kind of on top of that when we're ready to actually go ship a freemium game. We also try to help solve the distribution problem. We have an ad network layer on top of our platform. Does extremely well. Some of our biggest advertisers include Zynga, Pocket Gems, TinyCo, everybody in the space. So yeah, that's what we do.
Thanks. Last but not least, we have Ethan from Bessemer Venture Partners, obviously a very big venture firm. And I'll let Ethan talk about kind of some of their areas of focus and his particular area of focus with respect to mobile games.
So thanks everyone for having me. As Akash said, I'm with Bessemer Venture Partners. I focus on 3 areas within Bessemer. We're, as Akash said, a big firm, 5 offices, a big practice in India, several $1 billion under management, about 35 investment professionals across the world. Within that, I focus on 3 areas. One is consumer web, the other is mobile, and that's relevant to us here today, and developer platforms. And we're especially excited about mobile because of all the trends that were noted earlier on here, and that you all see in your daily lives and businesses. And especially excited about gaming within that because gaming tends to be, as we see it, a leading indicator of ways to make money on these new platforms. We saw it with the Facebook platform. One of my investments was Playdom that was mentioned earlier, and while not making it to the same scale of Zynga, we saw how these companies could go quite quickly on a new platform like that. I think you're seeing the same thing with mobile. Before Bessemer, I came from a company that would have been at pains to be called a game company, although that is kind of really what we were. I was with Linden Lab, which is the company behind Second Life. Built one of the largest virtual worlds out there, and kind of showed what was possible in terms of connecting people regardless of location. It is a game in a lot of the dynamic of how people used it, although if you see the founder, you shouldn't use that word because that's not how he thought of it. But a lot of the mechanics that kept people hooked on Second Life are game mechanics at the end of the day. So I'm pleased to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ethan. So you can see great panel here. So this slide you probably already read. I won't go through it. So these are some of the points kind of I surfaced as I was thinking about the space. As I said, I'm not an expert. I was just thinking, what are some of the challenges if you think about building a game today? The challenges, how do you get distribution? It seems to be a hits-driven business. It seems like a Bollywood type business. You get a good movie and then everything's good. In order to get a good movie, you need to get Shah Rukh Khan. How do you get him? How do you pay for all that? And then you need to distribute it. You need to make sure that you can advertise it. You can get it in front of people. So all the same challenges that happen in Bollywood or Hollywood to make a big success for a movie sort of are some of the same things that are being surfaced by developers who are building mobile games or trying to build mobile gaming platforms or companies. And for every angry bird, there are many dead birds or unhappy birds for that matter. So we pose this question to the panelists, and I'll start with let's start with Ethan. So Ethan, what do you think is what kind of companies are you seeing right now? And what are some of the challenges that you see some of these companies are facing? And have you done an investment recently for a mobile gaming company?
Great. Okay, so I'll take the last question first because it's the easiest one, and I can come up with something on the fly. We've invested. We haven't done a pure mobile gaming company yet. We're investors in Smule, which is a mobile music company that uses game mechanics to monetize, but it's really about sharing music and social music collaboration. And we invested also in a company called Life360, which is a mobile location family sharing app on the mobile side recently.
That's not a game.
That's definitely not a game.
Because I'm in that space, and that's not a game.
Well, it's not a game, but some of the mechanics that keep people in it are game-like. Your company
Gamification, maybe?
gamification of the family. I don't know, is that too big a stretch?
Okay, all right.
So,
We don't do any gamification, but I'll take note.
maybe you should.
All right.
So as far as what I'm seeing, it's a pretty remarkable space in that you can have somebody, you can have a guy in a garage or a woman in a garage create a franchise that generates hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a month. I mean, it does not take a company or it doesn't take all the infrastructure that it used to take to build a gaming company to do this, because the platform is so big, and the potential success is possible with getting a hit or finding a mechanic or finding a marketing edge that works. And so I see lots and lots of people generating, lots and lots of companies or groups of individuals building gaming companies, building games that become hits and generate revenue and have some lasting value for the entrepreneurs. That's on one end. The chasm between that and building a sustainable company where you can do that again and again, people mention Pocket Gems, people are mentioning Zynga, people are mentioning Rovio, I think they're a special case, but it's pretty wide. It's a pretty big chasm. So on the upper end, you have a couple of companies that have shown that they can do what thousands of people have done once or twice, can do it in a sustainable way. And so that tends to be what we look for. It's really hard to know it when you've got it, because you don't know whether somebody just has a hit or they have a process that can lead to a lot of hits. And it's everything from the analytics that you built into your game to be able to do things like monetize and generate content and know how people are using it so you can optimize, to how you acquire users and what you do with those users and what you know about those users. And so the folks like Pocket Gems that are successful again and again and again collect the best data, they know how to target the best, they know how to, they know what to show in what game, they know what to promote in what game. And those tend to be the sustainable keys to success. And they stay ahead of the platforms. I'd be interested in the folks with gaming companies and gaming monetization solutions. The platforms change their rules all the time. So it becomes hard to, knowing what the platform is going to do and knowing the points of vulnerability turns out to be a key competitive advantage for some companies. You don't have, when I invested in Playdom, there was another company that was almost as big called Crowdstar that took advantage of some mechanic in Facebook that Facebook killed overnight. And Crowdstar went down as a result. And so knowing that and diversifying your techniques turns out to be really important.
Okay, thanks. Sana, I was coming to you anyway, but it looks like you want to jump in. Please.
Yeah, so, one of the things when thinking about gaming is, where does this world actually come from? So right now you're thinking about investment in the last few years, but before that, the guys investing were more your console players and more traditional gaming. So if you look at that space, what was happening was there was very little self-publishing. You were very, very dependent on publishers. The publishers helped you with distribution, did all the marketing stuff. You kind of didn't know what your users were doing. You often didn't know them by name. You didn't have access to any of that. Now, that changed with Facebook, and Manu obviously being at Low Labs at the time was one of the earlier companies that was changing that around. So slowly, you see this platform where these younger guys, maybe small 2 to 3 people shop, are taking advantage of all these viral channels, getting a lot of users, and then eventually there started being more maturation there too. So people got their users, they cross-promoted to their users, they became incumbent, and then at the same time, there's you're spending a lot more money in order to get those users. And I think mobile is showing some of these same things, but faster. It, by its very nature, is virality, which is how a lot of these guys grew, was not as ingrained within the system. A lot more virality in mobile is organic. And so you tend to see, though, still in both these cases, a lot of lifestyle gaming companies. That's not the kind of company you want to make, because that's not the gaming company that's going to exit. We as an accelerator see lots of companies, and some of them right off the bat, we know they don't want to go for sort of an exitable business. And what we look for is not so much the hit space model, but game factories, right? So, and by game factories, who's thinking about the analytics, the distribution, making that repeatable? But as a startup also, since there's so many incumbents out there who have a big marketing reach, is this company, when it first thinks about its idea, looking at some latent demand out there which it's trying to meet? When it does that, is it able to then crack distribution just by that early evangelist? So applicants to our next round, which starts in March, about 7 of them already have downloads. It's anywhere between 4 to 20 million. This was without spending any money. right? So they found something that lots of players wanted, got to that height, and now before they can go for that next round of investment, they need to prove that these people also monetize. And tweaking the unit economics, and that's one of the areas we end up helping them with.
Andy, do you want to comment on kind of what you're seeing? What type of developers or publishers are coming to you? And seems like you have a platform that services them all, but I mean you also have to start thinking about making money at some point. So you must be discriminating to the developers that going to drive more sort of transactions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So being on the, if we look at playing from a distribution standpoint, we see a wide spectrum. It's kind of, I think it covers kind of the different pockets of publishers that we're talking about. Some are in a race to scale, right? So they're just they're going after reach. They're trying to get as many users as possible, and not really measuring LTV and customer acquisition cost and margin very closely. Particularly in 2011, we saw a lot of that. Some of that has calmed down, and I think obviously that's not sustainable. Others are very, very LTV. They measure their traffic attribution. They're measuring their sources, and they're managing margin, right? So you kind of see like two classes of company in that respect. And there's varying degrees of size as well. There's like really large companies, well-known companies that are just spending money just throwing money away, essentially, and there's some that are spending it very intelligently. So, from our standpoint, we can kind of get an early sense as to, what's going on in the market and trends from that perspective. But overall, I think everybody's trying to become the Zynga mobile, including Zynga, and they have a good chance of being the Zynga mobile. The key differences are, whereas as mobile game developers measure organic user growth, there's really no way to measure viral at the moment. It's not, you can't measure like click-through rates and share rates and conversion rates to really have a K factor, right, which is really critical when you're acquiring customers on Facebook. That sort of infrastructure doesn't exist on mobile at the moment, right? A lot of publishers have tried to build in, Facebook Connect and other ways to kind of to gather that data, but it's extremely difficult. So there aren't a lot of opportunities like Facebook and Zynga in the early days where they leverage the whole just spam tactics to grow and scale as quickly as possible. So what this means is customer acquisition is just tougher in mobile. It's more expensive, it's less sustainable. The other issue on top of this is you don't have a real strong relationship with your customer, right? So retention is a bit of a problem. And push notifications are really the only way to try to get your users to come back once they've left. But it's not very powerful to anymore. If I open up my iPhone now, I might have 20 different push notifications on my screen, and I generally ignore all of them. Right? So you don't have an email address, there's a really hard way to get them back. So that's why I think it's going to be a much more even playing field in terms of the battle and the race to scale. And some people are going to go, and there's going to be a lot of roll-ups, I think, in 2011, a lot of consolidation, a lot of fallout in the next 2 years. So I think over the next couple of years, you will see things formulate and gel a little bit more. But right now, it's a wide open race, and it's going to be fun to watch what happens.
Tracy, what are your views? You also see a wide spectrum of mobile publishers out there, and comment on sort of monetization a little bit as well, because most of these games are free to play. That seems to be something that's taking off in a big way. And the challenge of monetizing it via ads or via virtual goods or in-app purchase, all are somewhat challenging on mobile more so because it's just harder to sort of do transactions on mobile right now. Although there's a whole industry trying to crack that. So I'd like to get a little perspective from you on that.
Yeah, I think monetization is a really hot topic within the game development community. Particularly as it relates to these emerging platforms, Windows Mobile, and the work that BlackBerry RIM has been doing in terms of helping developers monetize their apps. We see, a lot of discussion about free-to-play, freemium game, monetization models as being particularly good for, bringing in revenue. But what we've seen really, if you look at a lot of the case studies that are being done for those games that have been successful on particularly iOS, is that it's a mixture of free-to-play. It's a mixture of what's called premium, which are premium apps that are $5, $6 downloads with in-app purchases within the game that incur additional revenue for the developer, and then there are just straight premium apps that are selling quite well. I work with developers who use all of these models. Some exclusively, and some are mixing and matching. EA Chalingo has been, kind of mixing and matching, trying to transition from purely selling freemium games into offering some free to play, some, premium with in-app purchase. And, some of the largest, most successful games like Infinity Blade and Infinity Blade 2 were actually very expensive downloads, $7 plus in-app purchases. So what we see is that there's a lot of hype right now about trying to lower the barrier of entry and making apps free. And I am a believer in, as someone who plays games both on mobile devices and consoles and on all over the place, I'm keen to ensure that the experience, I can experience as many games as possible. And that's ultimately, a real hardcore gamer, that's what they want. So releasing a game on a mobile platform and making it free is great, but if the quality isn't there, then the consumer isn't going to spend money once they're inside the game. And so while free-to-play can be a very powerful way, a very powerful tool to bring in more revenue, ultimately we're talking about product quality. And I think it's, tonight as we're talking about, business models and we're talking about, what are the best sort of practices moving forward in terms of bringing in revenue and repeating the formula of a hit game, we have to remember that there is fundamentally a creative element that exists in these products. And that if that is missing, then the formula isn't repeatable. It's the same thing that we've seen in television, it's the same thing we've seen in movies, it's the same thing we see in toy manufacturing. If the product isn't good, it doesn't matter what your strategy is, because it's ultimately not going to resonate with consumers.
It's a good point. Yeah, lots of people want to come in, but I see Sana, I see you, but I'm going to give these other two gentlemen a little say, and then so come back to free to play. We'll come back to free to play. You see that hit a hot button there. I see Sana. Okay, good. We like this agreement. But I'm going to come back to that. But I want to get Manu's perspective on one question that's in my mind. So I think when we were talking in the room, Manu, I think you pointed out that Zynga had acquired 3 or 4. You mentioned mobile companies recently in the last 12 months. So it seems to me that if I was an entrepreneur today, and I'm not I'm not an expert in mobile gaming, but just hearing this discussion. One of the things I'd be thinking of, it's easy to get started. I think that's what I'm hearing. There are all these platforms from Andy's company and from Tracy's company and others. These VC seed funds are out there. They're willing to help me. I can go to Sana's accelerator. And then what happens is I get a game out, and then I have a sort of a modest outcome, which is Zynga buying me, right? And from what I can tell, they're not really paying up for those acquisitions. I mean, they didn't buy Rovio, and they didn't buy some of the other companies that I think told them to take a walk. So I want to get your perspective. It seems like the chasm is getting bigger. It is you can get started, and then your best hope is to have a small acquisition, and really on sort of the terms of a larger company. So how do you see the market from that perspective?
Sure. So Zynga obviously wants to consolidate, just like they did on the Facebook sort of gaming space. Actually, as a matter of fact, the 4 companies acquired was over the last 3 months. So it's a pretty torrid pace. They also tried actually acquiring Chilinga, which actually EA ended up acquiring for $1.2 billion. So
was that a mobile?
So there was a distribution.
Yeah.
Right. So they were willing to shell up a lot more money, but ended up losing the thing. I think Gree was also trying to buy them. So there's a whole bunch of betting that happened. So the acquisition is not just at the $5, $10, $20 million, which Zynga likes to do at this range. And I think it's sort of if I'm a small developer building this out, I think I have a few choices. One is it could be a lifestyle business. I could make a few $100,000, and actually beats working for a large company, right? So there's definitely a set of people that fall in that category where they just want to make a lifestyle business out of this, and that's why you have so many games out there, right? And then once in a while, and for whatever reason it just takes off and does really well, and then you sort of get in the league where you may get actually recognized by a company like Zynga or somebody else and get acquired, right? So, or you really focus on trying to figure out, okay, how do I actually break through this business and actually make it happen, right? So you'll see, it's sort of like sort of a long tail, right? And that happens in most industries, right? But I think besides talking about the companies here in the U.S., whether Zynga or EA or Gameloft and other companies making acquisitions, you actually have pretty big heavy hitters from Japan, right? Both Gree and Dina are actually, Gree's revenues were actually higher than in last quarter than Zynga's were. I think Zynga was $300 million and Gree was about $400 million. And then if you look at their net income, it was almost $120 million for Gree and about $3 million or $4 million $12 million for Zynga. Right, so it's a 10x difference in terms of net income, right? So as a company, and they do have the currency to be able to go acquire companies, they're pretty flush with cash. And they have made acquisitions in the US as well and have global aspirations, right? So, and these companies have been making mobile games for a lot longer than Zynga has, right? They have the DNA in the company, they understand. I think the DNA that's missing is you have companies, I think, having been able to build really good games for mobile, and the other part is you miss the DNA for actually analytics, right? I think Zynga has that piece, and they're moving with their analytic background into mobile gaming, and the other guys are coming from the other angle, right? And I think they're consolidating on both sides. They're buying companies in between to actually fill the gap. So I don't think it's very clear who's going to Zynga. I think there'll be a few Zyngas. You have huge markets in Asia where Zynga doesn't have a strong enough play. You have huge markets in Europe and the US. So you may have, and the network effects don't work, right? It's not like I can be on Facebook and get everywhere in the world. I have 800 million people across the globe. It's fragmented, right? If I become, Gree has 27 million people in Japan, that's what, 45 million people in Japan, so half the country's on one platform, right? So they have the market cover. They can go across. They have a partnership with Tencent in China, so they can cover that market. They're coming to the US. I think you have segments of publish in the world that could be pretty big, right? And the market's growing to, I think your slide showed $12 billion in a couple of years. That can sustain a few large companies pretty easily. Right?
Okay, good perspective. Okay, so Sana, please jump in. Let's get back to free to play, and let's hear your disagreements.
So I think some of the examples used are probably not the best examples because they're coming from older companies. So, right, if you look at EA bought a company that used to be called Jamdat Mobile, right?
Yeah.
And so what some of these existing players used to do is that they used to pay a lot of money to create IP that's very, very successful. And then what happened was when mobile came around, they're like, okay, we want to get in. We have an inkling that this is going to work really well on mobile. So what I'll do is I'm going to go talk to some shops in India, maybe some shops in Canada, wherever around the world to port this onto mobile very, very cheaply. And since I've already paid off the cost of making this IP, I'm just going to put it at a price model. So anywhere from 99 cents to $7, you name it, right? So when someone comes out there, especially for you as a startup, if you don't want to go the licensing route, which I would recommend you don't because investors don't like when you don't really own the IP or in the assets, right? You're creating IP on your own. And when you do that, what's the best way for you to get users? Give it to them for free, they're going to come in, and then inspire them as they play to higher and higher levels in the game to actually pay you. So if you come out with a game tomorrow, having never made games before, maybe all the traffic you're getting is you're buying it from different options, your best bet is actually go free to play because users are most likely to pay more over their lifetime and to try out your game because you're faced with this really, really difficult discovery problem. So that's my concern with that answer is just that some of the guys who actually did the pay and get into this model had already paid off their IP, already had a brand name for those games, which is why it was easier when they got onto the App Store and someone announced, hey, I'm putting this really well-known game that you've played before on console, you've played before in other options here on mobile, and it took off instantaneously.
Okay, good. Ethan, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think I agree about 50% with what you said. I think it's important to remember that. Exactly, 49.5. I think it's really easy to kind of lasso all mobile gamers into one category, right? And say that, everyone, if you make your best, if you've never made a game before, to go free to play. And I think I agree with most of the logic on that. My concern, though, is as, production quality is definitely a concern, right? It's also about, I spend time with developers, I see lots of different games, everything from very casual stuff to very, very core-centric, core-focused content. And price conveys value to consumers. So if you have an app that is being offered free, but has production values that don't necessarily match with that low price point, free. If Infinity Blade had been offered, for example, for free, which you said that it was a bad example, that actually is an original IP that was created specifically for iOS.
No, because I was talking about your EA examples.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Yes,
Okay,
EA,
okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Ethan,
Yeah.
you wanted to comment as well there.
This is a good debate, I mean, because it's
Should we keep
actually
going
kind
at
of,
it?
what, sorry?
Should we keep going at it?
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of core to what you should do as an upstart game developer. But I think you gotta look at it from the user's point of view. Let's take that, I mean, because you can, you know, that's who's ultimately gonna make the decisions on which games to try, and which games to buy, and where to spend their dollars. And I think it's inevitable that people are gonna, when the options exist to play really high quality, high production quality games for free and try them out, and spend lots of money in the game over time. I mean, some of these RPGs, users are spending upwards of $1,000, $10,000 a month to be able to unlock levels and really experience the gameplay. I think it's inevitable that all games will move from free to play, because why pay for something when you don't know if you're going to like it? I mean, you have,
But people do pay games. I mean, look at Call of Duty. They spend $60 in order to buy this
And
this
that
game
is
'cause they
exactly the
want-
market that's losing sales right now.
yeah, and in the past, that was where
Call of Duty has sold more copies in its last
No,
installment
but
than ever.
generally console games and
Yeah, I
retail
know, I agree.
games-
I agree with that.
Because
Console
you have to
games
put-
But I don't think all games will go free to play, simply for the reason that there will always be some gamers, like I will pay for games.
So
Right
consider
out of the
your
gate, right out of the
source.
gate.